essentially a minimum viable product. So every single service has a lot of content, processes, sometimes even forms going up with it. And the way we like to actually start the relationship is understanding the processes, but also the priorities that you have. Who are your users, or who do you wish your users to be? That was difficult to say. But also, what are the main pain points for us to understand where we can actually add value? So the way we like to start a relationship with you is to discuss about it and essentially learning as much as we can from you to then start working. Next slide, please. So something which is really important when we think about a great user experience, there are three things we take into account. So the service goals, this is what I was just talking about. So, and this is why it is so important that we work collaboratively. So we keep it as a focus. The other thing is obviously the user needs. So this is a piece that we bring. So we follow best practices when we talk about content design. We try to make everything, I would say, human, writing in a plain English, but also we involve the user. So we do organize usability testing or user research in general. And the last piece, which is extremely important, and we also need to consider when we work together, is obviously any technical constraint. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I hope you're not too scared by it, but it's a very simple process. So anything you see in blue is how we like to collaborate. So I'll walk you through very quickly. So obviously we start from the top left. So we do like to start with a kickoff meeting together. We will ask you plenty of questions. And then from that, what we also need is to be equipped. So if you have any document to share with us, so we can actually walk through it. And then the next stage for us is to actually spend some time and absorb this knowledge to put something together and build an information architecture to see how we actually organize the content. Then we go back to you, step 5, we come back to you and we essentially collect your feedback to make sure that we're not taking a tangent and it still makes sense and it is actually user-friendly. Then following that, we iterate. And then finally, as you can see in orange, this is at this first stage that hopefully we like to actually involve users. So we do some testing to see if it makes sense to them. So we are all aligned and we don't work in silo. We don't disconnect from the end users, which is really, really important. And then from that, we obviously learn. Once again, we iterate, and then we start to, once we confirm the information architecture, the content designers start to actually write pages. The content designers are no subject experts. So once again, step 10, they will go back to consult you to make sure it's actually making sense. And then again, we iterate. And then once we're happy with it, we just move on to step 12, which is about testing with users, making sure that everything makes sense to avoid any rework, but also to make sure that whatever we publish is matching with the user needs and user expectations. And then once again, we just collaborate together, we work together and learn from the findings. And after that, we will essentially need to get your approval. And then finally, we can move on and hopefully publish to the live site. So this is the process in a nutshell. This is just a guidance. Obviously, it can come up with some exceptions. But just to give you a hint about what to expect, and also by empathy, the idea of this document we will share at the end of this session is to see how much time we will require from you and how we actually work together, ideally. So I hope it makes sense to everyone, and please stay with us at the end of it. And I'll pass over now to David. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So I've been working with Buckinghamshire Council since July 2020 as a content designer, first on the migration of Family Information Service content to its new microsite, and now on parking content. Next slide, please. Content design is a very new discipline and a role I moved into after working as a magazine editor for over 20 years. If you're not familiar with content design, it's about more than just writing new web content. I also collaborate with teams and subject matter experts to look at how information is structured, the best way to write and present information for users, and how to ensure user needs are at the heart of every page that we publish. For the past month or so, I've been working with the Bucks parking team, collaborating with them to develop a new content structure or information architecture for the pages on the Bucks site. I've also been looking at how we can unify content from the main Bucks site and the district sites and take any quirks or differences into account. But content design isn't an exact science, and while there are good practices that all content designers follow, everyone does it slightly differently. Next slide, please. My approach for the parking content was to produce a series of flow diagrams for the content, which is an easy way for people to understand how I see the pages being presented and the journeys users take when looking for information. On the screen now, you can see screen grabs of IAs I've developed with the parking team. Apologies, they're so small you won't be able to read them. Working closely with Julie, Mark and David on the parking team, the information architecture has evolved in recent weeks, and we went through 3 different major iterations to try and arrive at an IA that we're all comfortable with. To do this, I produced different iterations of the content plan for the team's feedback. And as I learned more about parking in Bucks, I was able to update the plan accordingly. As a content designer, I rely heavily on subject matter experts for help and guidance, which was particularly helpful on this project as I can't even drive, let alone park a car, a dirty secret I've managed to hide from the parking team up till now. Once the IA was agreed, it then became my content plan. And as I write new content for feedback and approval, I can tick off pages on the flow diagram as I go along. Next slide, please. Using the information architecture as my guide, I've drafted a series of content pages in our content management system, Wagtail, and shared these with subject matter experts on the parking team. On many content design projects I've worked on, I've used Google Docs to share drafted pages and ask for feedback. But being able to present teams with pages drafted in Wagtail is much more useful, as teams can see exactly how pages will look and how buttons, headings, and so on can be used to break up information and make it less dense for users, which is especially important on mobile devices where the screens are much smaller. Next slide, please. Of course, not everyone in the council has access to Wagtail. It adds a layer of complexity to the work, as I also need to prepare PDFs of the drafted pages that everyone can see, and accompanying documents such as the one shown here that indicate where links point to and highlight any questions I have about the content which I want the team to have a look at. But now that I'm in the swing of producing pages and these accompanying documents, the process is running smoothly, and I'm now looking forward to receiving feedback from the team on my draft work and developing parking pages that are helpful, quick to read, and easy to understand. So I'm not sure who I'm passing over to next.
So I think it's Tom next.
Yep, over to me. Cool. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about how we're collaborating with other projects that are taking place at the moment within Bucks. So if you go on to the next slide. So the first one is all around waste services. So currently the Customer Service Centre are doing a customer experience review with FutureGov, and as part of that, they're looking at all channels for customer interaction, so face-to-face, telephone, and the web, which is what we're doing. So what this means is a bit of overlap between our 2 projects, but it's quite useful because it means that a lot of the customer journey mapping that they're doing within the Customer Service Centre project is actually relevant to both projects, and so we can build on that for the work that we're doing on the website and help kind of ensure that cohesive experience. Concurrently to that, there's also a project happening within Waste Services to migrate the southern districts onto Veolia, so to help to consolidate into a single system. That's going to help to unify their back office. But to do that, there'll also still need to be a record of all the queries captured within the front office system, Salesforce. So if you move on to the next slide, what we see is of these 3 projects, kind of our project can kind of sit in between and act as this glue between the front office and the back office projects. So hopefully what we can get to is a nice happy place where we've got customer experience review leads to some really nice user journeys. We can implement those user journeys within the website and integrate the website into Salesforce. And at that point, Salesforce then have an integration in place to pass it on to the back office to actually fulfill the customer request. Cool. And then another example on the next slide is planning and some work being done with MHCOG. So MHCOG are currently funding 2 projects that Buckinghamshire Council are partners on. One around reducing invalid planning applications called RIPA, and a related one, the back office planning system, or BOPS. And so the idea is that a planning application, rather than going through planning portal it does currently, will go through RIPA, be handed off into BOPS, where like planning officers will then assess and either accept or reject the application. On the existing sites, planning related content is about 25% of all our content. There's about 1,000 pages in total. So one of the things that we are doing is, as we're about to start looking at planning content, we're going to be speaking with the guys working on RIPA and BOPS and the wider digital planning team, and just making sure that we're creating a really consistent user experience that kind of factors in all these different moving parts in planning. And there's loads of stuff going on in planning at the moment, not just within BUCS, but like nationally. And so just really ensuring that everything pulls together and sits in a way that's really intuitive to users.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thanks to Sarah and David as well. So that's the end of the show bit, and we're still telling. We have an open roadmap which we publish, where you can go and see what's going on. A little bit out of date at the moment, but that's one of my jobs for tomorrow, is to make sure that's fully up to date. We also have a load of great stuff coming soon. We've done some work recently, which was in the last show and tell, around the information architecture of our site, and we're going to be making some significant changes to that pretty soon, around groupings of where information sits. We've got lots of research, and we've done lots of work over the last 7 months worth of web analytics and a few hundred user tests that show where people look for content and how they find content on our website. Obviously continuing to work on parking and highways information architecture. We're also pulling together those reviews, as Tom says. We're talking to the planning team at the moment, and the schools team, to see how we start to work with them to start rationalizing their content. We'll soon, next sprint, we'll be releasing the campaign template. This is something that's been in our backlog for a little while, but which will give the comms team a great opportunity to provide more kind of campaign-focused comms, rather than just pushing people directly to our website. We will have individual campaign pages which are available, which will be more visual, have a potential to embed video links, that kind of thing. And one of the tasks that was for me is to clarify the roadmap with Cabinet. So we've obviously produced a roadmap of what we're going to be doing for the next 12-15 months. I have the joyous task of taking that to informal Cabinet. Unfortunately, next week's informal Cabinet has now been cancelled, so that won't go until May. However, we are still progressing with all the work that we're doing on the basis that we have that agreed already. So that's it from us for today. Next show and tell is in 2 weeks' time. You should now have a recurring invite for these in your diaries. If anybody has any questions, then please ask or put it in the chat. Otherwise, we will see you in 2 weeks' time. And I will upload the engagement document that, yes.
Thank you.
So Ryan had a question: will campaign pages be shared with family information? No reason why not. In terms of, it's a page which is sent out, normally done as part of a campaign. So they're time limited. So normally we wouldn't have them up there forever. They're not searchable. So they're not searchable within the site structure. So if you wanted to tell people about something that was going on in family information, speak to the comms team. They will work with you to work up a page, which is then sent out off the back of a social media campaign or something like that, which then pushes people towards specific pages, either in Family Information Service website or on our website. So yes, possible that you can use them, but they are a tool which is owned, if you like, by the comms team. Okay, any other questions? I will now just, if I can find it, upload the document so that everybody has got access to that. And what I'll do, if anybody wants to download it, I'll just leave the, if anybody wants to leave, and obviously they can, anybody who wants to download the document can, I'll leave it up there for a couple of minutes, so I'll just leave the window open. But thank you very much, everybody, and speak to you all in a couple of weeks.
Thanks.
Thank you.